Blank Slate, 2002.
That was on the concept of human nature. And I was pushed to write that in part because of some of the reactions that I got to how the mind works, where there were objections, both from the left and from the right, that were as political and moral as they were scientific. That the idea of an inborn human nature rooted in the biology of the brain, in turn rooted in genetics and evolution, is an idea that strikes people as uncomfortable, even dangerous. And so I wanted to, so much of the criticism from how the mind works was on these foundational, almost philosophical issues that I thought they had to be addressed. And for the political left, there are fears of innate biological differences. If men and women aren't identical biologically, will that set the cause of women's progress back? Racial differences, individual differences, do some people succeed more than others in society, not because of prejudice, but because they're smarter or harder working than others? That seems like a challenge to egalitarian ideals. Perfectibility, can we design a utopian society when we raise children without selfishness and violence, or will selfishness and violence always be part of human nature and therefore have to be dealt with by some kind of punitive method? Those are concerns from the left. From the right, there are concerns if we're really products of evolution, does that just mean that we selfishly try to propagate our genes and are deaf to higher moral callings? Does it mean that the foundations of religion, such as scriptures, have to be thrown out, including all the moral stuff, like the Ten Commandments, if the story of how we came to be turns out to be incorrect? Will there be infinite Twinkie defenses, excuses for bad behavior? My genes made me do it, my evolutionary history made me do it, so we can never hold people morally responsible. So there's this whole can of worms that's opened when you study human mind from a biological framework, and the Blank Slate was about those worms.
And who is the opposition? In opposition is maybe not the right word. Who would most likely be the people who would disagree with you most right now? I'm talking about the scientists who are working in this field.
And so not these political and moral?
Not the political. Well, in the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, in the political and moral sphere, there's the politically correct left that doesn't want to admit the possibility of any human differences. There's also I guess I can call it the politically correct right, because it's a different kind of political correctness, but the pro-religion, family values, traditional mores, sometimes seem to be in opposition to an evolutionary or biological framework. Within academia, there are people who want to attribute more to the environment than I do, people who work in neural network modeling, who try to devise models that soak up correlations of information in the environment and try to get away with less pre-programming. There are people who believe in that the mind has less structure than I would be willing to attribute, that is, that it's less organized into subsystems or modules or mental organs, and rather that we have one all-purpose learning device that we use for everything. So that's some of the opposition.